I'm going to get us started and moving here. I'm Selena. I'm a member of the steering committee. And welcome everyone. It's really nice to see you here. Thanks to Tom for the delicious food tonight. So just in case anybody didn't hear Charlie, what we typically do, because we're broadcasting for CCTV, is we use the microphones anytime anybody speaks. And Charlie will be so super good at reminding us of that if we forget, I promise. So as we introduce each other, or if you're speaking or asking questions, we'll ask you to pass around the movable mic. Can you hold that up, Rick, in the back? The microphone that's not attached to anything, the microphones that are wired up here and are sitting on chairs, we're going to leave them right where they are to help capture more of the sound.
Yeah, they can pass them around the front. I just don't want the cables going back.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's helpful to know. All right. So welcome to the Ward 1 NPA March meeting, and we have a little bit of a change in plans. Unfortunately, tonight, the folks who are going to come and present on overdose prevention centers, their kind of lead presenter, facilitator, has what sounds a lot like norovirus to me. So we told them to stay where they were, and which means we're going to have a little more spaciousness for some of our other agenda items, including counselor updates, school board updates. We're going to hear about Homeshare Vermont tonight. And if there's a little time left over, we'll have a facilitated conversation just to hear a little more from all of you about what you might like to do with these meetings in the future, what you might like to hear about. But we may get to 8:30 and just be just wrapping up with Rick. So we're going to see how it goes. And the agendas that we posted had a 9 p.m. adjournment time. That was actually a holdover from our last meeting when we extended a little bit, but our goal is going to be to wrap up at 8:30 tonight. Sound good? All right. So we usually start just with introductions. And we ask people just to say their name and where in the ward you live, what street, if you're willing to do that. So we'll get a chance to practice this passing of the microphones right away. So I'll start us off, and then maybe we can go front row, next row to back row. Does that sound good? What's that?
Saying so in advance is good.
Yes.
You can tell who's facilitated too many meetings in the room.
John is not using a microphone.
Oh,
I didn't say anything of substance.
okay. So I'm going to start us off, and then we'll go to Gretchen, if that's okay. And Gretchen, the folks in the front row should use this microphone? Okay. Why don't we pass it down to, so I'm Selena, and I live over on Latham Court.
I'm Gretchen, and is it on? Okay. I'm Gretchen, and I live right around the corner on North Street.
Yeah, and the microphone won't amplify you. It's really more for the camera. So feel free to use your inside-outside voice so we can all hear each other.
I'm Sharon Busher, and I live on East Avenue. I'm Catherine. I live upstairs.
Peter Lukowski, live on East Avenue in co-housing.
I'm Cheryl Green. I live with Peter.
So and go.
You want to?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you said not.
I'm Matt Price, and I live on Prospect Hill.
Karen Long, Henry Street.
Lisa Lax. I live on Tebow Parkway.
I'm Jonathan Chappell-Sokol. I live on North Prospect Street. I'm a current member of the steering committee.
I'm Rob Gutman, and I live on North William Street.
I'm Dave Cawley. I live on Nash Place.
I'm Allie Actor, North William Street.
That's one right there, Richard.
Make sure it's.
I'm Sam Jordan, I live on Colonial Square.
Listen to that projection, vocal projection.
I drove forward. It's very nice to see you on the other side of the microphone.
Jamie Stroutmeyer, Henry Street.
I'm Jamie Stroutmeyer. I live on Henry Street.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Nora Ahrens. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm actually an invader. Sorry. I live on North Union Street, Ward 3, but wanted to check out Ward 1, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Chris Hazley. I'm also from Ward 3 with Nora. We're live on College Street. We're just here to originally to hear the presentation on the Overdose Prevention Center, but here to hang out with some good company tonight. So good to see everybody, and thanks for having us.
Folks, that we can't hear you, the mic doesn't help us hear you. We have to hear you through your own projected voice. Chris, would you mind repeating what you said? Because
I'm Chris. I live on College Street, Ward 3 steering committee with Nora, and we came to support you guys and listen to the presentation. I recognize a number of people here from all wards NPA, so it's good to see everyone. Really like your spot here. It's one of the more welcoming of in the city. It's very good vibes here, so I'm happy to be here tonight. So thank you.
Rick Singari. I'm a Ward 1 and Burlington interloper. I'm from Homeshare, Vermont.
I'm Catherine Verman. I live on North Street.
I'm Angie Chapel-Sokol. I live on North Prospect Street.
Good evening. I'm Mark Demers. I live on Loomis Street.
Hi, I'm Carol Livingston. I live on Calarco Court, and I'm one of the steering committee members.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susie Moakley. I live on Henry Street.
Hi, Gary Golden. I live on Clark Court as well.
Sorry. Carter Newbeezer, Ward 1 City Councilor, and over on Riverside Ave. Riverside Ave. Carter Newbeezer, Ward 1 City Councilor, over on Riverside Ave. Yeah.
Tom Darenthal, Nash Place.
All right, so we're gonna just give some brief time for any announcements that folks have. And an announcement is just a quick notice of an event or something you want to share with the group that you think they should know about. We will out. And that is more when you get to share a big opinion that you have about something you love about Ward 1, something you have some questions or concerns about. So hold those thoughts for now. But does anybody have an event or just an upcoming thing they'd like to announce? And I should say at the end of this portion, we'll also have our steering committee election. Karen.
So I just want to get people interested in the TOOT committee. Their next
Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. sorry.
Got it.
I know that, but I am speaking loud. The TOOT committee will be on March 25th at 5:30. And my understanding, and I have not.
Can you tell people what TOOT stands for?
Transportation.
Energy.
Utilities.
Committee, I think, of the city council. Does that sound right, city councilor? Yeah.
Sounds like it. Well, it has been brought to my attention that the city planner, who is Charles Dillard, who is the head of TDM, which is Transportation Development Management, they are considering selling parking spaces to out-of-town people on residential parking streets. And I'm on Henry Street. We got residential parking because we were having problems with having too many students and employees from the university and the medical center parking on our street in the daytime. So this just seems kind of counterproductive to now sell spots to people that work up at the university. I don't know much about it. I got an email from somebody today telling me about this. So I encourage people to learn about it, read the 150-page report or whatever it is. but the meeting will be March 25th, 5:30 at 345 Pine Street.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. Susie or Carol, did one of you have the next announcement?
You don't. Okay, Susie. All right. So I just have a quick one. This is from actually Jason Van Drysch, who I think is Ward 5 or 6. Sorry? Ward 5. Thank you, Shawnee. So he sent us an announcement that he is part of a group of folks who are organizing a data privacy teach-in from 10 to 12 on March 29th at the Fletcher Free Library. We need volunteers to help people change privacy settings on their phone. Why would we be looking at this? Switch to privacy respecting browsers and so on. If you are the kind of person who other people always ask for help with their tech issues, please sign up now at the link below. So I will give that information. Jonathan, who I think has that, but that's on March 29th at Fletcher Free. The other thing I would just say, and I was going to ask Carter when it's his turn, Jeannie Keller, who was here earlier last month talking, has a lot of information about the MOU with the medical center and the new parking project, has mentioned that she's heard from different folks that the MOU between UVM and City Council is warming up again. So that would be great if you could respond to that or know anything about that. There's Jeannie.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Selena.
Any other announcements? Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Hi again. Still a little ways out, but I just wanted to share that the annual Cops Walk is happening again this year in Battery Park. Sunday, May 4th. Check-in is at 1 p.m. The walk starts at 2 p.m. And as I just said, it will mostly take place in Battery Park again, but the route will be a little bit different, and you'll get to go past our the new Main Street family housing right on Main Street in Burlington, and you can register online now. It's www.copsonline.org/ COTS-walk.
And am I correct that people can register and then sort of seek sponsors and donors to support their participation in the COTS Walk? So it's good to register ahead and help raise funds for COTS.
I have an announcement with my Sustainability Academy parent hat on, but we have our annual pancake breakfast on Saturday, April 5th from 8:30 to 11:30. It's a really joyful and fun community event that raises money for our school, but has delicious pancakes and lots of goodies. So check it out if you're around.
One of my favorite events. It's a good one. Any other announcements before we move on to electing our steering committee?
I think
we're going to do the election to wrap up announcements, and then we're going to move into Speak Out. Don't you worry. You get to speak out. Promise. All right. I'm going to turn things over to Jonathan to set us up for the election. Don't forget your microphone.
Oh, I'm the announcer.
Oh, did we have one more announcement? Okay.
I have my 2 shots. It's very strange.
Hi, I'm going to stand up here. Yeah, it's on.
Galley should be.
Is it rolling, Bob? Okay, so I've got 2 handouts. There's 10 copies of the entire bylaws. If people are interested, there's, you can share or you can not do it. They're fine print. So if you can't read it, then you just pass it on. And I've got a few more copies. That's just for completeness. I've got a few more copies that are legible of the steering committee requirements in the bylaws, what the steering committee is. And I would like to just kind of talk through this. I think I did this a year ago. I'm going to stand right behind Selena. But just to remind everybody what the steering committee is, these are the official rules of the steering committee in the bylaws. The steering committee shall have no fewer than 3 members and no more than 7. That was just 3 is a small number And 7 seemed like enough. If there's a lot of people interested in being on the steering committee, we can always amend the bylaws. Nothing wrong with that. The elections take place at the March meeting. Nominations may be individual or by slate. And I think you're going to hear both tonight. If the steering committee has fewer than 7 members, a nomination can be made at any meeting. I mean, if we only have 4 or 5 or 6 people on the steering committee, anytime you want to join, you can get nominated. And then actually the election takes place at the subsequent meeting, just to make sure that everybody knows about it. Then it's a warned activity. The term is 1 year, and it starts with the first meeting in April and ends with the last meeting in March. You can be removed with a 2/3 vote of members participating in an NPA meeting, but it has to be warned. Okay, so if you're so unpopular as a steering committee member, the group can get together and set an agenda item for the subsequent month to get you off the steering committee. Wouldn't two? Oh wow, that would be okay. A quorum of the steering committee is just a majority of the number of people on the steering committee. All decisions of the steering committee shall be decided by a simple majority of members of the steering committee. Vacancies, unless it results in fewer than the minimum steering committee members, no action is taken with a vacancy. Somebody can resign anytime they want. And then we come to the duties. What do you do if you're on the steering committee? There's meeting management. You've seen it here. We facilitate, we make food, we take notes, we give advice, we do stuff at meetings, arranging, advertising, convening, coordinating, and facilitating the meetings. Neighborhood outreach, sharing information, meeting schedules, and NPA activities with NPA members, ward residents, and the general public. If you can read the small print document, NPA members is anybody over the age of 14, I think, who comes to a meeting and lives in the ward. Municipal monitoring and oversight, pay regular attention to actions and plans of city departments and so forth for the purpose of keeping the district, and I think it should say the ward, informed of events, investments, and proposed projects. And so that's a steering committee obligation, but you also hear it coming out of the room. Is that so many people in Ward 1 are connected and engaged that during announcements, we very often hear about things that are happening that are important. Proper recording, so taking minutes. Representation at the all wards NPA committee. So about 4 times a year, there's a group that gets together that's called all wards. And there's typically at least one representative from each ward who comes to the all wards meeting. And it's a place where people can compare what they do, try to figure out best practices, talk about opportunities, talk about things that can be done together. And then we also do have a conflict of interest statement. We think it's kind of important that while the steering committee doesn't really have very much authority, if you're on the steering committee, let's say the example that goes through my head because it's my time of year for complaining about the sidewalks. If I had a sidewalk repair company, I don't think I'd be in a place to put a resolution in front of the NPA about repairing the sidewalks because I'd have a financial interest in the outcome of that if we took it to city council. That's a conflict of interest. And the mayor, sitting city councilors, school commission members, and mayor appointed city department heads are not eligible to be on the steering committee. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. We pretty much all come to this meeting. We meet once, the steering committee typically meets once a month, the week after the NPA meeting, and it's exclusively for the purpose of agenda setting. And we get together, we set the agenda for the following month. And once we decide the kinds of things we think are on the agenda, we send out invitations. We kind of set a rough timeline. We send out invitations. We try to get people who might come to present or talk or be interesting to the NPA as a whole, and then we post the agenda on Civic Clerk. Shani posts the agenda on Civic Clerk. We do postings on Front Porch Forum to make sure that at least we can inform people who read Front Porch Forum. And then maybe after the meeting, maybe we write thank you notes to people. who have presented, or if there are follow-ups, or if there are questions that come up during an NPA meeting, we might work on following it. So being on the steering committee has virtually no authority, no power, nothing that that really, like, if you were, if you thought this was a great deal, it is a great deal. And it's a great deal because you get to engage with the community. You get to learn a lot about how the city works. And it's not a ton of work. It really isn't a ton of work. So with that, does anybody have any questions before I hand it off to the master nominations election guy? Okay. Thank you. And Gary's going to actually run the election because he's a disinterested. I'm not letting go.
I have one. I have one. Thank you. Whoop, my fault. All right. I can get over here. So I have two tasks. First task is the nomination will be divided into two separate pieces. Nomination of the 4 standing members who would like to continue. Motion second, and then any questions you would have of those members, and then a vote. And then similar process, anyone from the floor. We have 2 people who are interested in joining. So they will be nominated. You have questions for them, or if they'd like to make a quick little statement about why they want to join this crazy group of people, that would be fine. And then a vote. And then I have another task that I'll wait till the end of that. So we have 4 members of the standing committee who are interested in joining, and their names are not on here. So I think I live with one. I can say Carol Livingston is interested in continuing. Jonathan Chapel-Sokol, Sam Doherty, and Selena Coburn are all interested in continuing. Do I have a nomination or a motion that they be accepted as the first slate? And a second? Thank you. And any questions for me or them from anyone in the room? Sure. Mm-hmm.
You for wanting to. I really love the fact that we. Whoa. Charlie's yelling at.
I was trying to model for you.
So I'm so sorry, Charlie. I know better. I want to thank everybody who's willing to continue, and I'm really happy that we have diversity in age. We have a young member, so I think that really just makes it a really great steering committee. So thank you all.
Great. Anyone else? All right. With that in mind, may I have your vote for accepting this slate of steering committee members?
Aye.
Aye. Great. And anyone not? Great. All right. Thank you. That passes. And then we have 2 members or 2 prospective members who have someone to nominate them. So let's start with Gretchen. You want to introduce yourself and...
Yeah.
I should have handed it over.
I'm Gretchen Platt. I live here at North Street, but I also own a triplex with my husband over on Nash Place. So I have other neighbors here in that way. I have 4 kids in the school district, and I am really involved with Edmonds Elementary and the middle school and the high school now. And I just really want to get more involved in learning how our city works and what I can do to help make it a really continue it to be the wonderful city it is, and for my kids to grow up in. So.
Thank you. And who would you like to nominate? Great.
I'm gonna nominate Gretchen. I don't know Gretchen well enough to make an absolutely glowing recommendation, but what I do know about Gretchen is that she is a staunch supporter of the community, staunch supporter of Burlington schools, and a staunch supporter of the close neighborhood in
Great.
Ward 1. And I would nominate Gretchen for the steering committee.
Thank you, Richard. And a second, please. Thank you, Catherine. So any questions for Gretchen? Okay. We should just probably go ahead and vote. So all in favor of her joining the steering committee? We're just going to accept that and not even ask. All right. And then Rob has offered to also join if Rob Gutman, if he'd like to a quick word about himself.
Sure. I'm Rob Gutman. I live on North William Street. I might be familiar to some of you or all of you. I come to a lot of the NPA meetings. You see me here most of the time. I ran for city council a few years ago. I spend a lot of my time in community service. I serve on a couple of Burlington city boards and commissions right now. And I also build houses for Habitat for Humanity as a volunteer. And so I spend 2 days a week doing that. Some of our projects are in Burlington. Some of them right now we're working in Winooski. Our last project was in Manhattan Place. I would encourage anybody here if they want to know anything about volunteering for Habitat. I know you've all heard about it, but talk to me because we're always looking for people to come out and help get these houses built for others who need them. And other than that, I think that the steering committee has an important mission, and I'm crazy enough to want to be a part of it. First and foremost and top of mind is for Ward 1 is UVM MOU. And so I'm always thinking about that. I think that's important for us as a group to consider.
Great. And who will be nominating you? Angie, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Angie Chapel-Sokol, and I would like to nominate my friend, Rob, to have a seat on the steering committee. I've known him for a few years, and I don't know anything bad about him, but
yes.
So everything I know about him is really, really good. He's very engaged in his community. He's respectful and has boundless curiosity about how things work. And I admire that a lot and I appreciate it. And so I'd like to put Rob Gutman's name up for NPA 3.
Thank you. So motion and second. So vote for, oh, that's true. And need a second. And Jen, thank you. I got ahead of myself. Thanks. So all in favor of Rob joining? Great. I'm not even going to ask. Thank you both for stepping forward. And then meant to get this into announcements, but didn't. Congratulations, Allie, for stepping up. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Good point. So I'll get back to you. So anyone else who would like to join? We heard the rumor that there might be one other interested. Okay, great. So thank you. We'll close that part out. Just congratulations. It hadn't been said yet. Allie was elected for our East District City Councilor. Why you would want to do it? We appreciate the hours and the going home each evening and rub sandpaper on yourself to toughen up your skin. But thank you. And I just wanted to do that before she came and joined Carter up here to speak. Anyway, I'm done, so it's okay. So thank you. You want this one?
Yeah. Well, actually, no. Great. Thank you. Thanks so much for stepping up, Rob and Gretchen. I'm really looking forward to working with you. And before we move on to Speakout, I just really want to say the hugest of thanks to Tom Darenthal for his time on the steering committee. I got to know Tom as just like one of my neighbor, my constituent, just like such an engaged member of our neighborhood and community. And we're so grateful to you, not just because you brought the most delicious chili, but because you're just so committed and present and engaged. So we look forward to seeing you at the NPA meetings. Hope you'll still be in our midst. Okay, so now we are moving on to Speakout, and I'm just looking right at you to kick us off, Sharon.
So, yes, I was going to thank Tom also, but I'm glad you did as a steering committee member. Committee and the TDM plan, and I just we both spoke before this meeting, and I've been following this. And so this plan, there have been a lot of TDM plans, but this plan came from a pilot project that happened when Community Health Center was going to lose parking around their location because of making bike lanes, etc. And so a pilot was put forward of trying different scenarios. And then that pilot got expanded into a total program. And so, as Karen referenced, the document seems really onerous, but I want to refer you to, and I always try to give people direction, there's a government meeting calendar. And if you go there, and I don't know the date of the last TUC meeting, but I went to it and I weighed in. And although that document is very lengthy, Charles made a presentation with slides that you can access that gives you the nitty-gritty of this. And so the proposal for selling some residential spaces, you need to really look at it because it's not suggesting that they just sell all the spaces on streets that have residential parking. There are limits and there are selections for those streets, and I can't speak to those details. This is not the arena anyways, because I'm not the expert, but I want people to go look at those slides if you have time. And so you'll inform yourself and form your own position on whether or not you think this is a good idea or not. I think those of us who have lived in wards surrounding the university and the medical center know the pressures that are put on streets and the parking that can be eaten up by people who either are visitors or employees of those institutions, or students of those institutions. And so we're very concerned about any spaces that would be then freed up to generate revenue and allow people to, rather than take shuttles drive into Burlington when we're trying to reduce traffic in Burlington and then sell those spaces. It seems contrary to the big picture of what we want to do. So the reason I'm telling you all of this is that I want you to try to educate yourself and form your own opinion. And I also am going to propose that, as Karen stated, the meeting on March 25th is the TUC committee, and they are discussing potentially moving that forward to the full council. What I would like to suggest is that because we have two new district councilors, ours that represents Ward 1 and 8, obviously, but Ward 1, I'm talking about Ward 1, and then Buddy, who represents Ward 6. Both of those councilors need to have a chance to look at this plan, form an opinion, hear from your constituents before it gets voted out. So I really hope that this gets delayed. It won't go anywhere anyways, because the last city council meeting is on the 24th. There's two committees on the 25th. So it's going to fall to the new council anyways. But I just want people to know about it, and I wanted to expand it a little more. You know, I get very passionate about things. It doesn't matter whether it's parking or quality of life, but it's really important to me as a resident to have the other people that live in the ward get informed and make their own decision on these items. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, for your always meticulous attention to how issues that affect our neighborhood are moving through city government, and your generosity and just helping other folks know how to really dig into the details as well. Does anybody else have anything they want to share? Richard, you got a mic over there?
Back there. Sure. Thanks. I'd just like to take issue a little bit, if Jonathan doesn't mind, with one or two other things he said when he was introducing the role of the steering committee. I disagree that the steering committee it carries no influence. I think it can carry a lot of influence, but that is going to be entirely as a result of your own energy, your own interest, your own compassion, your own involvement with the community. I don't want to do a litany of things that I've seen happen. Sharon could probably do it much better than me, but that have happened for the benefit of Ward 1 over the last 25 years or 25 odd years. But it can be substantial. And you just heard from Sharon and Karen, something that we can really get involved in and really does affect us. So, I mean, it's not just the people who come to the NPA, it's someone has got to have the energy to go to these meetings like Sharon has done so consistently, and Karen also. But it's an important part to play, and I think you can be influential, and please be, especially with the specter of the institutions, but a new planner as well. So thank you.
Appreciate it, Richard, and spoken like a true, not sure what happened to light, spoken like a true stalwart.
True grit.
I was going to say a true stalwart, longtime former NPA steering committee member who held it down for many, many years. Yes.
Hi, Jean Keller, Bilodeau Parkway. I just wanted to kind of close the loop on what happened with the UVMMC MOU. We lost. They got everything they wanted. But I would like to direct you, and I think, Sharon, you make a really good point. Sometimes buried in the materials that go to the city council and the departments, there are memos that are mind-boggling. Charles Dillard, the city planner, wrote a memo to the city council for that final meeting where the decision was made, and basically said the neighbors were right. These institutions are going to clobber the neighborhood, and we need an in-depth planning process focusing on the institutional impacts on Ward 1. He spells out issues about land use and open space, green space, and he actually gets into a description about how the TDM plan could have an impact on our neighborhood. So you would have to go to the meeting documents on the website, city website, for the whatever meeting that was where the vote was taken. I can actually send a link to this memo, but I ran into him on election day and asked if he'd be willing to talk with some of us about what he has in mind for what this planning process could be. They've done it in the New North End. I think they did one in the South End, and he wants to make Ward 1, our neighborhood, the next target for in-depth planning. So we could figure out a way to support him. I think he's an ally on this. I really do. And we could maybe get him to come and talk about it at some future point, but maybe we could have a group of people who are dogging that issue, following it, going to those meetings and stuff. And I'd volunteer to do that. So out of the ashes, we might get some attention from the city.
Can you tell the things that they won? Sorry. Can you just name the things that they won?
Oh,
the hospital.
Basically, they won all the height allowances they asked for. They won carrying forward the current height allowances on what would replace the McClure garage, which is 9 to 11 stories with a 12-foot setback. They won not guaranteeing protection of the berm along Colchester Avenue. They won putting parking garages over the surface parking that's now up by the medical school. They won having those parking garages up to the height of the water tower. I mean, they basically did not lose anything. What they gave to the neighborhood is what was already in the old MOU. They just carried that forward. They did not change anything regarding us and how we live in the MOU. So that's why I look at it that way. And Charles, I just thought reading Charles's memo gave me hope that there's someone who heard us, who wasn't influenced for whatever reason by the medical center's presentations. And I just want to say this is a very funny thing. Gene Bergman said when UVM said to him, well, if you don't give us what's in this MOU, we're going to leave. He said, I said to them, oh, you mean all that land will become taxable? How soon can you go? I think we need to have that kind of attitude about this. Call the bluffs. But Charles, I think, could be a real good ally, and we just need people to dog that process and make sure that the council approves it and he gets the support he needs.
Would folks like us
study.
to invite Charles to maybe to a steering committee sooner rather than later to just talk about what a process like that could look like? Yeah, let's put that on our. Yeah, of course.
So, thanks. So I just wondered, did Tom write that letter after the vote was taken or before?
Tom.
I'm sorry, what's his name? The
Charles.
planner? Charles.
Charles submitted the memo to the city council before. It was the report of the planning commission, the city planner, on what the consequences of this all were. One of the lines that's in there, though, that I think, is telling about how he knew what was coming down. He said, you don't do city planning in an MOU. You do city planning with a planning process. So he was saying that wasn't the place to make the long-term decisions. And it was when I ran into him and said, boy, we'd really, I think there are a lot of people at the NPA that would love to talk with you about this long-term process. And he said, that's when he said to me, oh, and by the way, the UVM MOU is on the move. So he told me that. So like I said, I just felt like, we could work, we should try to support him as far as we can. Yeah.
Great information. Thank you. Unless there's, all right. Well, how about last speak out and then we'll move into, or I see two more. If you can be quick and then we'll move into our council and school commissioner updates.
I have two things. One of them you may have seen when you came in, a sign that says Quakers demand no ice in houses of worship. And what happened that you may not know is that a number of Quaker yearly meetings, New England, Philadelphia, and New York, sued government, I guess, for coming into churches and grabbing people and deporting them, and won. And so now, if somebody who's undocumented is in this building, ICE cannot take them. That's how we understand it, which is pretty cool. The other thing is the question of oversight in free injection sites that are being planned and also in shelters on cold days, and whether or not the city council members should be allowed to freely go and check on what's happening there. And that's something that I would like to see discussion of.
May hear some about that at counselor updates, possibly. Great. That'd be great, Carter. Angie had something. She's going to wrap up our speak out.
To be very quick. I would just like to thank everybody who voted for voting. And I appreciate that those of us who participated did, because this is a democracy and it's how we keep it together. The other thing that I want to say is that I appreciate the respect with which we all treat each other in this meeting. And that's another piece of democracy, or really humanity, that we should be mindful of other people and how they operate in the world and be respectful. So that's what voting is about. And I appreciate that everybody did that. Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. That's a fantastic note to end on. I appreciate you. Let's bring up our Counselor Carter and our counselor-elect. Would you like to join? Allie?
Sit next to Carter. Pretend like you're able to see.
I feel like we could go to 8:15. Is you about 20, a little over 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh.
8:15?
45.
Hi, everybody. I'll start because Carter has the meteor updates being an actively serving city councilor. But I just wanted to say I'm Allie Schachter. For those who I haven't yet met, I'm your councilor elect for the East District. I consider it such an honor and a privilege to have the opportunity to represent this district, wards 1 and 8. And I really am very open. If I haven't yet spoken with you or you have any thoughts, ideas, concerns, or questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'll stick around after the meeting if you want to chat about anything or get something on the calendar before we leave, or all of my contact information is on my website as well. But I really do hope that we can be off to a really strong footing together, and you can reach out to me anytime. The more open our lines of communication are, the better I'm able to represent all of you. So it's a true honor, and I'm going to let Carter handle most of the updates right now from the current city council. But thank you all so much.
Yeah, welcome, Allie. I'm excited to get to work together. We're gonna
Same.
grab coffee on Friday. It'll be
Yes.
good. It'll be good. So we've only had one meeting since I took notes on a couple things folks asked about. So I'll touch on those. We had one meeting since we were all last together. There were a couple really good things that I think we've all have expressed our priorities for Ward 1 that I did want to highlight. The biggest one being the fact that Champlain College is going to build 33 new student on-campus beds. I know it's kind of a drop in the bucket in the overall picture, but it is a good sign that Champlain has real interest, the city has real interest, and that's moving in the right direction. So that passed, I think, unanimously at this last council meeting. We had to lift a cap that we had on them so that they could sort of develop existing administrative buildings and turn those into new housing for students. The other unifying was bipartisan, came out of Tuke, was a resolution asking the state legislature to prioritize sustainable funding for our buses, because right now, as we all know, rates are going up. Tom could speak more eloquently than I can to it, but rates are going up for riders. And we're also seeing, threats to being able to electrify our buses, threats to services. So we've got to figure out how we're going to, both at the state level, but also obviously the federal funding's in question, how we're going to provide affordable public transit. So asking the state to really prioritize that conversation in this legislative session. And then I can speak to the controversial one, which was 6.4, which someone raised. 6.5 was also a unanimous one. We extended the security contract for the 2 downtown garages, so the marketplace and the downtown parking garage. Since the mayor took over, we added more patrolling from the Chittenden County Sheriff's Office in those 2 places because that was something that was identified as a need. And we're continuing to the security contract in terms of giving more coverage on a regular basis to the parking garages, because they can be hotspots of different activity that's harmful to the community, and we want to make sure that people are able to access those facilities at all. Access those facilities at all parts of the day or night that we need to use them. On the MOU, to Jean's point, Charles, I just want to say Charles is really interested in, we talked about that a few times around developing a long range planning process for our neighborhood, because his feeling was sort of, the MOU, he supportive of the MOU, but was saying that sort of some of the finer details, it's just not the place because it's just not a binding document. So we can argue for, years, but really we ought to have a community process where we're engaging people across the board. We did talk about, and I think it's a great idea to invite Charles to steering committee meetings for the NPA, because we talked about how the NPA can really be a resource. And I think we have a stronger NPA than other parts of the city. And so we should, I encouraged him to sort of engage folks, both the wider body, but also the steering committee in terms of, how do we have that process in a way that we're engaging people, and actually doing good community outreach that's thorough. Because while we're all wonderful, we're not necessarily the representative bunch of Ward 1 all the time. So that's that piece. So does anybody have any questions? And then I can jump into Catherine, your question.
To mention,
Mike.
Carter was the only,
Carter was the only vote against approving the UVMMC MOU. So thank you, Carter.
And just to be clear, not to undercut the praise, there were things in the MOU I did like, and I tried to communicate the reason I was voting no. But yeah, tried to make my reasons clear. And I do think that the folks that, like Karen from the hospital we were engaging with, the folks that we were actually talking with directly as a neighborhood, I don't know that I trust the institution we're talking with. And I think that that's a distinction we got to remember as we're having the conversation. Any other questions?
So I have to disclose that I worked at the hospital for 50 years. And so, and excuse me? Yes, no. And so I care deeply about their mission. And I also have always seen a very clear distinction between the University of Vermont and the University of Vermont Medical Center. And of the two neighbors, the two big giant neighbors we have, the medical center has been a better neighbor and a more responsive neighbor to the concerns of the neighborhood than the university has. The university has been somewhat callous and uncaring about our concerns. So as we move forward, I hope that people can understand that distinction and not lump the two together, because they're not the same entity. And I really do look forward to what happened when you encountered Charles, and it will be a broad look at this section of the city, because one of the things that I brought forward to him was that the only open space we really have is Shamanska Park. All the other open space is owned by the institutions. And so when they start talking about intense development, we get really scared, because we don't have any open space except what the institutions allow us to use. And so I'm really look forward to that process. But Carter and Ally, I really want you as representatives to understand the distinction between these two entities, and which one has been a little more responsive. May not like the outcome, but I feel they've been more responsive. So thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. You just reminded me that to your point, the UVM MOU is coming up. I don't have any substantial updates more than I had last meeting, other than to say, for me, the number one priority is looking at, especially, I know we all read the auditor's report. We're all familiar with it. We've been talking about it for a while. If you haven't, you can Google Doug Hoffer auditor report UVM MOU. It'll probably pop up. One of the big themes was that there isn't necessarily follow through on enforcement. So we come to these agreements, and then multiple times over the years, both on the city side and the university side, more concerning to me is the university side, there has not been follow through all the time when we look at the end results. The other piece is, and many folks might not know, because I don't think we have a lot of students in the room right now, but the university is supposed to, they're exempt from code inspection, right? Like, we don't have to certify them like you'd have to certify a rental unit. They're supposed to self-certify and send the city certification saying we are code compliant. All the dorms are code compliant. Recently, my colleague, Counselor Broderick, asked for that certification. And we could not find it as a city, and nor has the university produced it after months now. And there's also been widespread conversation on campus about, I mean, just like, I don't even want to start listing it, but they're horrific living conditions. There's mold, water damage, just stuff that, like, if you think about the worst instances of, you know, rental units in Burlington, apply that to the dorms. And so anyway, I could get more into that, or sort of point for folks in the right direction. But what we've started to do is encourage, we have buy-in from code enforcement now that they are going to start fielding reports from students. And so we've started to encourage students in different dorms all across the campus to report code violations directly, so that we can then use those in aggregate from there. So I don't know how that'll affect the MOU conversations, but I think there's a piece there to discuss. And then the other piece, obviously, is the one we always talk about, which is getting UVM to house more students on campus. But as we're pushing for that, obviously, I want to make sure that that housing is safe and habitable and affordable as well. So that's sort of my, brief update there. I mean, we're just not into the details yet, really, with the university. Any other questions? I got 10 more minutes, I think. Yeah.
Does Bill Ward have any jurisdiction in UVM?
Well, so theoretically, yes, but the agreement on the books via an ordinance from a while ago now, I think, and Earhart's not here tonight, but I think he was one of the folks who helped write this when I talked about it with him, or was around when it got implemented. They're supposed to say, instead of us going in and doing inspections like we do at any other rental unit, they're supposed to self-certify and say, no, we are code compliant. We're like meeting the basic minimum housing code, all that good stuff. So we do have jurisdiction, but we've sort of made an agreement that we're not going to go look at dorm units individually historically. That's proving to be the wrong approach, I think.
It's a projective facilitator. Did you want to hear about the shelter access issue and oversight too?
I had a question about the MOU. I mean, we were just talking about the previous MOU with the medical center and how this, you know, that we're really thinking this should be more of a planning process. And I'm wondering if that's the case also with UVM and their MOU. You know, should we as a city be using a different mechanism?
I don't know, maybe. I would have to think about it more, honestly. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good discussion to have. I'm open to talking more about it, but I'm not sure.
I also wonder if it's by design that the MOU is sort of like sets the broad parameters, and then there's like the planning process that then flushes out, like, what does that look like in practice? I don't know. That's a question I would have, I guess. Maybe it's a both and, like you sort of need both.
Just one more MOU question. Can you just describe the state it's at? I mean, is there a piece of paper that's being passed among attorneys, or they're just general conversations, weekly meetings? What's really happening right now?
It is my understanding that we are
figuring out what the shape of the table is going to be.
Yeah, like very, very beginning. I think we're not going to start in earnest in terms of real substance until the universities decide on the new president. And I don't know I don't know exactly where they are in that process, but so it might be even post-budget, but I don't want to give any dates and then be wrong, because their dates are always moving in city government. I'm learning on various items. Any other MOU questions before so Catherine, so your question, yeah, it was a little bit of a contentious item on last meeting. We didn't really get into the substance. It was postponed. It was 6.4. It was postponed to March 24th. Essentially, the proposal that came before us, it was sponsored by two folks on the council, was requesting that city councilors that we come up with some sort of process to allow city councilors access to emergency warming shelters while they're operating. The reason being, the stated reason being that there was interest in oversight, or that the counselors had an oversight role to play, and that in order to play that oversight role sufficiently, they needed to be in the facilities. And actually, we had at least one city councilor, maybe two of them, I think both sponsors, or I at least know one of the sponsors, showed up to the Miller Center, and staff said, "I'm sorry, you can't come into the warming shelter while it's operating, because that's against the policy around access," which it is. And so to sort of break that down a little bit, I'll also just say there's a whole slew of other accusations from the sponsors about the need for this resolution. The implication was that they're being denied access, but the mayor got access. That was one claim that was made on the floor. They said that this is executive overreach, that this is an oversight role and you're not allowing us. This is Mayor Emma's policy, was the language used on the floor. There was an implication that guests at the emergency shelter, one of the reasons they need to provide oversight is that there's a tacit support or allowance of open drug use in the emergency shelter, was another concern that was thrown out there. There's also communication that staff were encouraged to not report problems at the emergency shelter, which are all very substantive, big, concerning claims that we ought to litigate and are important if true. But there was also zero evidence provided to support those claims. They're very serious claims. So just to sort of walk through, and I'm not all-knowing, and I also don't have access to the emergency shelter. So I just want to break this down a little bit. First, why do city councilors or the public not have access to the warming shelter while it's in operation? These are shelters that are stood up for 48 to 72 hours. They are meant to get folks who are when it hits -10, into warm conditions so they do not freeze to death outside. Many of the folks who are guests at these shelters have a variety, not everybody, but a number of folks have a variety of issues they're dealing with. Oftentimes it's sort of a healthcare social service environment. And so it is not appropriate for me to go enter that environment. There's privacy concerns, there's safety concerns, there's liability concerns. This policy was not created by the mayor. This policy was in place and created by the previous administration. This policy has been in place for shelters under the previous administration and this administration. This policy is required because this is not just a project of the city of Burlington. This project is required to be vetted by our insurance companies, by the state of Vermont, and by ourselves. So this is not an invention of city government. So that's the access piece and why I don't find it appropriate. I'm happy to entertain workarounds or ways that, we can, get to the meat of it, which is if we feel like there's oversight that's not being had, let's figure out a conversation. Let's figure out a process to do that. There was a claim made on the floor, and I usually ignore these things and I don't bring them up in MPAs, and I don't want to be bad vibes, but it's just getting to such a level in the council that I feel like I need to just be direct with everybody, and then folks can make up their own minds, and just try to be sort of clinical about these things when they pop up. The other piece was that there's quite a bit. The other piece was, and I took notes here for myself just in case it did pop up because I figured it might. there's a lot of conversation. Everybody at the table, the mayor, the caucus I'm a part of, the opposing caucus, everybody said we want to collaborate, and yet nobody feels like we're collaborating with each other, which is an interesting dynamic to be a part of. What I've consistently asked of all my colleagues from either caucus is that if we write a resolution, what I've done, I brought 2 resolutions to the floor since my time on the council. I send them in advance, 2-3 weeks, sometimes more, to each individual city councilor. I have then, for the most part, I didn't call every single counselor the second time, but I called the vast majority of counselors directly and said, I sent you this email. I would love line by line feedback on the resolution. I'm willing to build consensus. It doesn't mean I'm just going to accept every edit I get, but I want to work on this, and I think it's important, and these are the reasons why. And then some people can agree and send me, and some people say, okay, I'll vote for it. Some people can say, no, I'm never going to vote for this. And then folks have provided line edits from either caucus. And then I have, the last resolution, the housing resolution, Sarah and Ben both provided really good feedback that made the resolution better. And so I accepted it on the spot. Other folks provided feedback I didn't agree with, so I didn't accept it. That's okay. That's the standard that I think, if you're talking about true collaboration on the council, is the standard that we need to be expecting of one another, both as counselors and then as sort of community members looking at counselors, because that's how you make policy in a serious way. So, I've been called naive by my colleagues for suggesting that. I've been told that I'm too new to weigh in on how the council should operate. But I think that that is what the community has consistently asked us, not only Ward 1, but across the city. That's what I hear from people. And it's not just one party or the other. It's not a particular political persuasion. Across the board, that's what people are asking for. So that's what I think we should pursue. So I just want to put that out there on the collaboration front, because I think we're going to keep hearing about it. And I am excited to figure out how to work together with Alex. I think we can sort of lead the charge a bit here. The other piece that I just want to make sure folks appreciate is the vast majority of folks who work at these shelters are not city employees. They are employees of other organizations, CVOEO, CHT. We have zero hire or fire power as a city, the administration, over any of those employees' jobs. These employees are also often, and I don't know in every case, but I think the vast majority, if not every case, when it comes to emergency shelters, these temporary shelters, employees volunteer to take shifts that work at these organizations. So they're being paid, but they volunteer saying, I'll work more, a form of overtime. So an implication that the mayor is trying to, I don't know, threaten people's jobs is just on its face, doesn't make sense in that regard, because the mayor has no say over most of the folks' jobs who work there. There's also, if anybody ever has a complaint, anybody in city government, there is a process laid out in the union contract, and it's an HR question. And if any counselor has information about a serious HR claim, that information should go directly to HR. No counselor has provided that to HR, to my knowledge, in regards to this subject. But that is how you handle an HR question, because these are city employees and they're not political fodder. They do a lot for our city, especially the folks serving and doing work in emergency shelters, especially. So that is a very frustrating point, or a frustrating piece for me, because we need to retain city employees and encourage them and support them doing incredibly difficult work, not drag them into political debates. I also know that the emergency shelters on the city side, after every emergency shelter, there's a debrief among staff, city and non-city, that they talk about what went well, what problems did we face, what can we improve. That happens every single time. So the idea that there's some culture of don't speak up, we don't want to hear from you, is just just not the case. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I'm running out of time, and this is not a good positive note to end on. I'll also just say I know personally that the mayor's chief of staff engaged for hours with sponsors of this resolution. Hours. Any implication that the mayor will not work or did not work on this is patently false. And it is driving me up a wall, as you may be able to tell, when we can't just sit down and have a conversation. We don't have to all agree. We're all political people. We're all here. We all have different views. We're all trying to advocate for the community. But like, and you saw some of this frustration, and I'm over explaining it because you saw some of my frustration, maybe if you watched the last council meeting. But like, let's just grab a coffee and talk about it. I mean, it doesn't mean we need to agree. It doesn't mean we need to vote the right way. It doesn't mean we need to talk about it in the same way. But just this like endless, exhausting, like nonstop argument in unproductive ways with no real substantive, attempt, like good faith attempt, is just not what I want to spend my time doing as a city councilor. It's not why I ran, and it's not what voters are asking for. So I will stop and get off my soapbox. I probably talk too much, but that's that whole, and we're going to talk about it again on the 24th potentially. So we will see how that goes. All right. Thanks, everybody. Sorry to end on a bad note.
Well, I'll say it was a bit of a positive, sitting here nodding in agreement about how they do want to collaborate and set a different tone. And looking forward to their coffee on Friday. So thank you both. I think you really have an opportunity to model something for the rest of our city. Our school commissioners, we'd love to hear from you.
We'll try for 10. We'll try for 10. Up to them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. I'm Matt Price. I am want to thank you all for your support on town meeting day. You had a choice to vote for me or no one else, and you chose. Thank you for that. But I'm excited to be on the school commission. It seems as though I thought this would be fun to be involved with the school commission. As I said before, I have a child in 5th grade, child in kindergarten. We invested in our school district for many, many years to come. It seems like I got in at a wild time with education in our state and at the federal level. So I'm happy to learn a lot and listen to all of you to hear if any feedback or questions or concerns or things we should be aware of as we work for the East District as a school board. And also I'll say is that just be careful out there. I slipped on some ice a week ago and fractured my elbow. So be very mindful out there. So I do not own a sidewalk repair company. So there's no conflict of interest.
But if he did,
yeah.
Yes, there's no conflict of interest with this.
Yeah.
Have a no ice sign out.
Yes.
That was a good one. Did you introduce yourself? Yeah, you did. Okay, good. So Gary Golden, I'm the outgoing East District Commissioner and the onboarding Ward 1 Commissioner for a year. We had a gentleman had to step down from his spot. It remained open for the rest of the year, and I took it as sort of a stepping off point. So first, thank you for voting for the budget. Really appreciate that. It was still in the 70s, which we are on this string of elections between the bond and the last 2 budget votes. And we do appreciate that. And we realize it is a hardship for many in our community. And I think that's why it came in at 4% decrease from last year. Helps that was a really huge hit last year. So anything down from that looks good, but it's sort of, that increase is sort of baked in. So it's the high school. It really is the high school, you know, and it's a gift to the next generation. Sorry, Sam, that you won't get to. Yeah. Yeah. I've said to you, you'll get to brag to your grandkids that you went to high school in a mall, except there won't be malls for them to know what you're talking about. Want to keep it kind of short tonight. I've been asked to sort of stop pontificating, and I think that's an actually fine request. Just trying to imagine what's going to happen. I will report on two things that I've talked about that are starting to happen. Just in case you haven't caught it, on the state level, a more complete bill is being presented, still a little bit by bit, by the Scott administration for dealing with school costs and organization. As someone who's worked in several districts, I'll say most supervisor unions out there are already pretty lean, and they're already working in conjunction with other where they can, whether transportation, food. If you go out to almost any school in northwestern or central Vermont, the Abbey group out of Sheldon is doing their food. So it's not like you're saving any money, you've already done it. If you're talking about closing schools, get ready for a big transportation bill. So that's my little bit of pontificating. Where I'm getting a little perturbed is Maine went through this 10 years ago, and I've tried to look at articles from that time period. They're doing the same things that we're doing. And the last article I read from the Portland Herald was there were no cost savings through those in the long run with those efforts. If you don't close a school, fewer people, less cost. If you don't lay off teachers, that's where the money is. So that's still working. At least they backed off use of private schools. The last proposal I saw was if a school didn't have 50% of their population tuitioned this year, they would not be added to the list of private schools that could receive tuition. And that's really sort of a caveat for I think there's still 12 private academies that serve public students, like BFA St. Albans was, they're now public. BFA Fairfax, Burton, St. J, Linden Institute, those are all private, but they are the choice for many towns in their area. So they're grandfathered in. Got to find a new word for that. The other is that yesterday, Secretary of Ed McMahon at the federal level put in place plans to fire half of the workforce of the Department of Education. And there's moves for more. By law, they cannot abolish the department without a 60-vote Senate majority. But there is, by all reports, and I think directly from White House staff, that there is an unsigned executive order on President Trump's desk to instruct Secretary McMahon to begin work with the Senate to dismantle the Department of Education. Our direct impacts. Title I is probably our most extensive reading program on the federal level. So it would be on the chopping block. Title IX is the equal rights part, and that's one of the divisions that was cut. And then my background, special ed, IDA, which is the legislation that provides services for special ed students, would also be affected. All that's a question mark. I'm not going to talk about what could happen. We'll have to wait that one out. So that's my report out. Want to give you as much time for questions as you might want. You probably are aware of what's going on as well, even though, because we haven't really talked about this at the board level. Oh. Oh.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if everything is on track in terms of the high school
Okay.
construction, and is the opening date expected to be in the fall?
Fall next year, fall 96, not 95. 26.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to 96, though. I'm not sure that
Okay.
was a great year. Yeah, sorry.
So
2026.
Okay, so we're still more than a year out.
Yes.
Okay, it's looking really good. Like,
Yeah, it's all internal work. I can do a real quick update of all of our projects if you want, real quick. So that one got moved from the dream was winter starting 2026, but between extra lawsuits that were filed and then different pieces of environmental uh-ohs that we found along the way pushed us back into, there's no way, we may have been able to move spring break next 26, but no, we're just got the summer to move, got the summer to get in. And it'll be great. It's going to be easily the newest high school in the state, and has been built to that. But there have been costs that have been cut along the way as far as it's say quality, but functionality is still high on the list. But we just had to make cutbacks based on extra costs that we've come across. Because we're really, determined not to ask for any more money for the project. We've, Sharon, you had?
No, I want you to finish.
Oh, okay. The facility at the airport has been started on. We've moved a good chunk of our tech center there because we have an incredibly strong aeronautics program, actually a couple of them. When I had meetings at the high school and I'd walk through the tech center, there's the body of a helicopter. Well, if you go out to this new facility, there's like 20 planes that they've just picked up along the way, and they take them apart and put them together. Advanced mechanical is there. They're going to move the combined auto program. It's both body and mechanical now. So most of the orphans are going to get put there that were not included in the high school. IAA, the old, won't call that. The old North End facility is on track to open in September. So, no, who had a sibling? You, yeah, that's what I thought. We'll get to move there. All those moves are going to save our budget. We're paying pretty astronomical rent. The worst is easily Macy's. And once we move, that's $2 million a year we don't have to pay. Yes, Cymex has just killed us. Just know what he would do with the building, I have no idea, but he's making the most of his situation. I think those are the Eagle Point, which is the combined alternative high school programs that opened out at Bishop Booth Center on the lake. Is pretty much open, waiting for the city to redo the bridge across the bike path so that larger vehicles like school buses, et cetera, can cross. But otherwise we are in, and it's a beautiful facility, and the students are using the lake as a teaching model environment. So that's that update. Any other?
Yes.
Yeah, now
So of the programs that get resources that are federally funded, are they 100% federally funded, or is there some local dollars? And would those programs, just worst case scenario, if the federal funds were eliminated, not transferred to another agency to administer, first of all, the first question is, are they totally federally funded or are there local dollars, state and
Right.
local dollars?
Figure I saw is approximately 10% of our education budget, state and local, is federally financed.
Okay.
There, Senator Jeffords actually moved to independent from Republican because the Republicans had over the years underfunded the IDA, the special ed funding, which he had
Okay.
helped write. So that continued, but we still receive direct money through reimbursement there, and then we get other money through Medicaid, which is probably will go away.
You get money from Medicaid?
Yes, we
Oh,
if you
God.
prove billing. If you prove certain parts of your IEP services through that match up with a Medicaid billing item, that was the worst part of my month when I was there because I had to do that accounting. It doesn't go into special ed, it just goes in the general fund for the school district to be used as it wants. But it's there. Title I would be the largest hit. I mean, it just depends on, they keeps, the statements being made is shifted to the states. They know better what they need. They're talking about responsibilities, but financing hasn't come up yet.
So the city has an unassigned fund balance, okay? And when we had to get our ratings with Moody, we have to have like 5% of our revenue. Is the school board allowed any kind of rainy day fund? And that's not the right title, but are you allowed anything? Especially, even if you were, you probably spent it all because of the high school, but is there any such fund?
Not how we're funded though. Remember the educational fund, we're funded from the state. We present them a past budget and then and based on our needs, that money is routed to the state and
Yeah, I know the money
falls on the
so-
state.
So
Kind of good in our case.
well,
No, all we can do is hold our costs down and hope that other districts will take that charge up. Because a lot of the main reason, and I think we've proven this last year for all the failed budgets, were districts did not plan for the cessation of the COVID money. And they hired staff. They hired a lot of staff. And then they wanted to let them go. We didn't hire staff. Minimal. We did some administrative level, but most of it went into curriculum and into buildings. The IAA is all ESSER money from the feds. Anything you want to throw in there? Last question so we can give over to our guests. All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey. Thank you. And just thank you, school commissioners. Thank you, city councilors, for serving in these roles. We're so grateful. It's a lot of work, and we're grateful to you for being here with us. And Rick, I'm going to bring you up to talk about Homeshare Vermont. And while I'm expressing gratitude, I just want to say I acknowledge that the spaciousness that that we gained by not having our overdose prevention center presenters available tonight means that you had to stick around a bit longer. So thank you. We appreciate you.
Well, it's really exciting to be here on election night. And I'm glad you all stuck around. I am Rick Singari, and I am the Outreach and Communications Specialist for Homeshare Vermont. And Homeshare Vermont basically is an organization where people who have room in their homes are matched with people who are looking for an affordable place to live. And we started right here in Burlington. A few volunteers got this idea, heard about it. It was happening out in Northern California and thought, boy, this is so very Vermont. And 43 years ago, they started, it was called Project Home at the time, but started Homeshare Vermont, and started with the help of Cathedral Square, then some help from United Way. were able to hire a director, and eventually from Burlington spread to Chittenden County, then through all of northwestern Vermont, Grand Isle, Franklin, and Addison County. Just before the pandemic, there was a program that had been operating for 10 years in central Vermont, and that went under, and the state asked us to step in and take over Lamoille and Washington and Orange counties. And then about a year and a half ago, with additional funding from the state of Vermont, we were able to expand into Windsor County, most of Windsor County, with a partnership with a senior center there, a few towns in the Northeast Kingdom, and a few towns in Rutland County. And if we're lucky enough with additional funding this year, we hope to expand to the rest of the NEK, the rest of Windsor County, and to Windham County, and then in a few years finish and color in the entire state and be able to help everyone in the state who could use home sharing. So let me explain how we go about what we do, and feel free to ask questions as I go along. Of course, since I come from a radio background, I'm going to be really particular about making sure you're on mic. But what we do is first we start with an application. And when someone applies to Homeshare Vermont, there's no fee to apply. Again, we try to reduce as many barriers to creating these home share matches as we possibly can. And when someone does apply, the first thing we do is background and reference checks. And then we have case managers who will work with the applicant, whether they're a host or a guest, to learn what would be an ideal home share match for them. And we ask a lot of questions. We've had 43 years of coming up with questions, so we've got them. And we want to get an idea for the host, for instance, what the rent they would charge, what help they might need around the home, and also what the house rules would be. And for the guest, what rent they can pay, what help they can provide, how many hours a week that would be. And also we find out from each their interests. We want to create a compatible match. We want to make sure that they'll be able to get music they listen to, what TV they watch, what their lifestyle is, whether they stay up late or go to bed early, what their politics are. If that's important to them, that they live with someone who at least can discuss politics with them. So those are all important things that we find out about. We also, from the host, we want to know things like, will they allow a pet? How about smoking, cannabis use? Can their home share guest bring other guests over? Can they be overnight guests? Can they be overnight romantic guests? A lot of questions people don't necessarily think about when maybe they're asking someone, renting to someone, or asking them to stay in their home. We like to make sure those are all asked up front. So the next step in the process after we meet with an applicant is to then start to see if we have a possible match for them. At any given time, we already have about 70 to 80 host applicants we're working with, about the same amount of guest applicants. I don't know why we just can't all match them tomorrow and we'd have 70 or 80 more matches, but it doesn't work quite that way, they tell me. So when we find a potential match for someone, we'll call them and tell them everything we've learned about the other individual. Call the host, tell them about a potential guest, call the guest, tell them about a potential host, and see if they'd like to meet. And if so, we set up an introduction. The case manager is present. And again, we foster that conversation to see if they get along. Check back with them in a day or two, see if they want to move to the next step. And the next step in the process is a 2-week trial. And so that 2-week trial is a good time for people to get a feeling of whether this is the right home share match for them, or if home sharing is even right for them. It's not necessarily right for everyone, takes some adjustment, but it is a good way for people to have companionship, get some help around the home, to reduce social isolation, and for the guest, a very affordable place to live. I mentioned several times the help that someone can ask for, a host. And so our guests can provide help, which would not be home health care. It's help around the home. So it's things like shoveling the snow or mowing the lawn, helping with gardening, maybe doing some light housekeeping. It might be cooking several times a week, could be pet care, tech help, running errands, driving someone to appointments. We have a host down in Weybridge, for instance, has a pretty large property, heats his home with wood, and so he and his guest log together. Doesn't happen very often, but sometimes the matches we make are pretty incredible. And so they heat that home, they give some of the wood to their families, and then what's left over, they give to people in the community who can't afford to heat their homes. And so it's a really neat knock-on effect of one of our matches. The number of hours of help that someone could ask for is up to 12 hours a week. And we also cap the rent that someone can charge. So the maximum rent that a host can charge is $650, which by today's standards, that's pretty economical. But here's what happens. As someone asks for more help, then they usually ask for less in rent. And so the average that our guests are providing right now in help are 7.5 hours a week. The average rent they're paying is $360, which that's, about a fourth of a one-bedroom apartment in Vermont right now. So, and think about this. When they pay that first month's rent, they pay that first month's rent. That's not first, last, and security. Now, that's $4,000 or $5,000 that a lot of people have to come up with up front. And in our case, they wouldn't have to. There is a fee, a one-time fee we do charge if a match is made. It's on a sliding scale based on income. It goes from $60 to $500. And again, if anyone has any problem paying that, we can set up a program for payment or we'll waive it. We don't let that match fee ever stand in the way of making a match. Right now, we have just over 90, I think 93 matches, which is the most we've ever had in the 43 years that we've been doing it. The match itself, there's an agreement that both will sign, and that will state the number of hours of help that's required, what that help will be, what the rent will be, what the rules of the house will be. And in effect, that agreement is a month-to-month agreement because either party can end the agreement with a 30-day notice. All right. So most will last about a year to 5 years. The average right now is just under 2. We do have one match that's going on 14 years, and we have one that's going on 19 years. So when we get it right, sometimes we really get it right. But the whole idea is if we do our due diligence up front, if we do the background and reference checks, which we have one woman in Addison County, she's on her third guest, and she says we're worse than the FBI and CIA put together. And then she says, thank God. And so if we do the due diligence, though, of the background and reference checks, if we, find out about their backgrounds and if they'd get along, and we do the introduction and we do the 2-week trial, those matches should last from a year to 5 years or some infinitely. They all end, and when they do end, one thing you should know is no matter how long they go on for, those case managers are available to be called upon to help if anything happens. So if I moved in with you and we had an agreement that there'd be no pets, but every once in a while I bring over my friend's dog and you're all right with that, but then I bring the dog over for good, you might have a problem. And so, and now I might have a problem. So if you're not comfortable talking to me about it, or you get no cooperation talking to me, you can call a case manager and they can foster that conversation. And then one of three things happens. I change my behavior, we change our agreement, and I can bring over the dog a couple days a week or whatever we might agree upon. Or that's the end of our match. And all matches do come to an end at some point, but it really is important for us to help them end gracefully as possible. And in 43 years, most have. But it takes a lot of work, and our case managers are really good at trying to navigate that and making sure that not everybody's as terrible a home share guest as I was for you. I'm sorry about that. I probably should have done dishes more often too. The other thing that's important to know is that home sharing is, there's no age or income requirement. So on the host side, right now we have people from 27 to 99 who are hosts. The average age is 72, does skew higher. On the guest side, they range from 22 to 81, with an average age of 47 or 49 right now. We have people, who are guests in middle age who have gone through a change in life. It could be a divorce. It could be a grandparent who wants to move to Vermont and be closer to their children and grandchildren. And we're able to try to find that for people. We're not 100% successful. And this is a methodical and purposeful process. That means slow. At lightning speed, we can do a match in a month. That's us like bursting. Most of the time, it's going to take about 3 to 6 months, and that's if we have the compatible match for someone, right? Because as much as it could be a great situation that a host is offering, their requirements, we just might not have the right person at the right time. It's even more pressure for a guest who might have a deadline of when they move out. And so that gets a little more difficult. And so we do always counsel people that it's important to continue to look at every available option, because we can't guarantee that we're going to find that match. But I would say about 25 to 30% of the time we do with each applicant. Another number, I'll throw one more out, is I mentioned how as people ask for more help, they ask for less in rent. 25% of our hosts charge no rent at all. So think about that. That's, almost probably about 22, 23 people who have been housed and just have to provide 10 to 12 hours of help a week, companionship, maybe overnight presence to make sure someone is safe in their home. And the host, all they want is that and no rent at all. The host can ask for a utility share in addition to the rent if that's necessary, and some do, and we're happy, for that to be part of it. So when someone comes to us with their idea as a host of who the best guest would be, and a guest comes to us with an idea of who the best host is, that's when we go to work and try to make these matches. And it's pretty credible that we're doing it for 43 years now. So how are we doing on time?
So glad you came tonight.
Okay.
So I grew up in Massachusetts, and not that I'll share my little story a little bit. My mom had osteoporosis and fell. She didn't know, but she had osteoporosis anyways. And she ended up, my dad had died years ago, so she ended up being in her home, but needing services. And I don't come from any kind of money at all. And so I had to try to be as creative. Now, I knew Kirby Dunn because I've been around a long time. And so I thought Homeshare was wonderful, but I also was naive to think that the state of Massachusetts, when I proposed, did they have this? They looked at me like I was a little bit crazy. And they said the liability was too high and sort of patted me on the head. And, no, there was no option like that. And yet that option would have worked. I mean, not only does it provide companionship, but it allows people to stay in their homes. And I don't know if anybody has loved ones that have had to go to assisted living, which is good, or nursing homes. But the quality of life is so different if you're in your home, in your own environment. And I think people live longer and are happier and more satisfied. So my question is, first of all, I was very disappointed that I couldn't make that work. There were other options, not great, but other options. And my mom stayed in her home. But are you aware now? I mean, I didn't realize the model was from California. I didn't know that. But are there more than just California and Vermont with these programs? Or are you aware at all of programs like
I
this?
am. There's a national organization, and you can look up to see if it's in your state or in your area. And one would have thought that 53 years ago there, 43 years ago here, and the map would have filled in pretty well. It hasn't. As a matter of fact, just across the Connecticut River in New Hampshire, there are zero home share organizations. People call us from New Hampshire and want us to go over there, and we want to. We have to serve all of Vermont, which we still have to. So unfortunately, it's a very difficult thing to create, and the liability is one of the issues. It's a very difficult thing to remain sustainable. And thank goodness we've had support from the state legislature. We've had support, great leadership. Kirby Dunn retired after 23 years in charge. We have wonderful donors. Right now, we have a great raffle that's going on. I've got information that you can take with you. 6-in stays, great shopping spree in Montpelier, different things. But that's the most difficult part, is remaining sustainable. And we're really lucky that Vermont has the values it does. And we have great donors and organizations, foundations that help us with grants and things
I'm
like
just
that.
glad you've expanded beyond where your beginnings were in Vermont. And for anybody who, I mean, I just see the value in this. This is like your agency's right up there for me, probably because I saw the need and couldn't access the need and realized the value of it and realized the difficulty in providing this. But thank you so much for doing this.
Question back there. You have a mic?
The implications for
Let's get you a mic.
yeah, I need a mic. I should know this. What are the implications for someone who's declaring a homestead?
Yep.
And so, and the implications for the education tax credit.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to tell you everything I know about taxation over the next couple minutes. You're probably going to have 17 more questions. You have a tax attorney. That's who you're going to follow up with questions. But I'm glad you asked this. So first of all, what's taxable? Your rent that you would receive is taxable income. So with the feds and the state, as far as income, that's an important thing to know. So a lot of people also, will look at what they're going to charge for rent to make sure it doesn't affect them negatively with certain benefits. Okay, that's an important point. Now, the second point about homestead taxation, property tax. Our state legislature did a really wonderful thing a number of years ago to incentivize people to share their homes and not rent their homes in these situations. If you rent your home to someone, your property tax for your household income, you need to include everyone who lives in that home. Anyone you're renting to. I'm living with you, you're renting to me, you've got to include the $1.1 million I make a year in your household income. if you went through Homeshare Vermont and have a home share agreement, the state allows you to waive my $1.1 million for property tax purposes. Yeah, really, really.
So you
great
don't have to add that person's
income, my income to your household income. You must have a legitimate house, a home share agreement from Homeshare Vermont.
Okay.
But yes, absolutely.
So
pretty great
as the host, you don't have to add in the rent you get, or you do?
The rent would be your
Income.
earned income that you would declare.
But the guest doesn't add to household income.
Very good.
Okay.
I think you might be the first person who fully understand the breadth of my tax explanation.
Okay.
And I've been doing this for 2.5 years. This is the second time I've played this room. All right. Do we have a mic for you back there? Richard, you got a mic around?
We're on. Cool. I was just curious in terms of guest applications, what would and background checks, what would make someone ineligible or be denied?
So the background checks, we do 6 different background checks. If anyone has been convicted of a crime against person or property, we cannot work with them. All right. And that's either host or guest, right? A lot of people think, of course, you don't want that guest moving into someone's home who has a criminal background, but we also want to make sure that the guest is safe, right? That we're taking them to a home that's safe and that the host, has passed that background check as well. And then the reference checks are, people you've worked with, people who you've known for a long time, could be family members. But with the reference checks, what we're looking for is your character, and also, it gives us more breadth to know what your interests are and who would be an ideal match for you. How we doing?
We're doing good. We probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions, and it looks like Peter's got one.
I just wanted to say that we have a person in co-housing who's over the years has had there's a person in co-housing over the years has had a few people coming in. It's been very, very successful, and we're really grateful that it's meant a lot to her.
That's fantastic. One more quick one. Anybody? All right. Well done.
You are ending right on time. A record for. Thank you so much. And thanks for sticking around a little extra. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you next month. It's awesome to be in community with people right now, exercising and protecting our local democracy. So thank you.
It's like.